How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys Alex and Ryan. So I have not been here for a couple of days, and it's been a little bit of a Ryan show, talking about the prospects, breaking down some good stuff. I just had a baby girl, so as you can imagine, I am exhausted, but nonetheless, here to talk about the Yankees. And we've lost the last two games and had 30 runs against the Milwaukee Brewers, and the offense, kind of a crazy situation. How do you score 30 runs in two games and then two after that? I mean, it's bad. The Orioles are a good freaking team, and to be honest with you, I don't really think the Yankees match up with them right now. I don't think we're good enough to beat them in the postseason. I don't think that we're good enough after getting... Here's what I'll say, though. I think that getting Gerrit Cole back will give us at least a shot. They have Corbin Burns. Dean Kramer yesterday was tremendous for them. They've been really good. I mean, look, the Baltimore Orioles have a lot of really great young talent. The Yankees do too. I think next year we'll see more of it in terms of Spencer Jones and Jasson Domingeuz. Speaking of Jasson Domingeuz, we're going to talk about him and his injury update in this episode, plus a little bit on Gerrit Cole, who's making some really great progress. But, Ryan, how you feeling after the last couple days? Been a little bit of a bumpy ride, some highs, some lows. But the Yankees still remain, obviously a very talented, high upside team. They just do it very inconsistently. They need to be better on a day-to-day basis. One day they're amazing, and the next day they're horrible. And the only really consistent piece that we've seen is Juan Soto. He's the only guy that has been hitting every single day, bar none. The guy shows up, and they need Aaron Judge to keep, getting a little bit better. They need less volatility from Rizzo. They need Gleyber Torres to start picking things up. Oswaldo Cabrera's numbers are plummeting. Third base is becoming a problem offensively for them, and he's not obviously that great of a defender there. So, how are you feeling about this team right now before we dive into the injury concerns and updates?
So, on the injury front, things have definitely, they're definitely looking up. That quote from Boone talking about, Dominguez might be a few weeks away from, getting back into the swing of things and getting into rehab assignment and all that. And then in regards to, Gerrit Cole, him throwing off flat ground and things going well, that's really good. You just kind of care about how Gerrit Cole responds to, progressions in his throwing program. As for that Orioles series so far, obviously things, if the Yankees win the next two games, I think you walk away from the series. You know what? You're like, all right, we're back in first place, blah, blah, blah. Things are good. But yeah, this is, look, they don't have Alex Verdugo. That hurts. I think you're kind of missing having that guy to extend your lineup. You're kind of getting a little too, there are more at-bats for guys who have been struggling. Judge is you thought he woke up in Milwaukee, and then he kind of lays an egg in Baltimore where he's usually pretty good. It's getting, just kind of frustrating at this point with Judge. I'm not necessarily concerned. It's just more so frustration, right? I think frustration is normal. That's more of the fan talk. Maybe I'm more frustrated because the Knicks blew that game. Maybe I'm more upset because of that. Maybe that's kind of just amplifying all this. But having a guy like Dominguez is definitely going to help. I kind of look, and I don't mean to start pointing fingers at players and saying like this guy isn't good enough or whatever, but I still look at the DH spot, and I'm still kind of looking at it pretty strongly and saying how can the Yankees maybe get a little bit better there. You mentioned third base is definitely a position where you're gonna have to reevaluate. I think you and I both anticipated that Cabrera would kind of hit a rough patch eventually, but I kind of hoped it would be something that would keep him around a league average hitter. Would I take a 95 to 100 WRC plus from Cabrera? Yes, absolutely 100%. Do I think he'll get the opportunity to keep playing? Yes, right? You're not going to make a trade in May. John Birdie will come back and kind of alleviate some of those matchups where maybe he's not as good in those matchups, probably against lefties. I think that'll help him. But, looking at Dominguez, looking at Cole, those are big additions. Again, getting Verdugo back from paternity leave, kind of having two Alexes who have birthing situations. So, that's pretty funny. But with this offense, man, it's just they put up, they can get hits, they can get on base, they can hit home runs. It just feels like it's very come and go. It's very feast or famine. And I don't mean that in the way that some people would, where it's you're either hitting 5 home runs or you're doing nothing. I mean it in the sense of they're scoring 30 in 2 games or they're scoring 2 in 2 games. In losses, they're averaging 1.7 something runs a game. In wins, they're averaging 6 point something runs a game. They kill teams when they win. They are kind of losing these close games where what is going on when they don't win. There are some games they've dropped where you're just how do you not win this game? Right? The shutout against the Rays, the third game, that final game of the A's series, where you're just how are you losing these games? And they play impressive baseball. They're 19 and 12. They're on pace to win over 95 games. I kind of need that to be put into context here. The Yankees are winning over 60% of the games they play. They are a good baseball team. They have a great run differential. They have, a good pitching staff. They have a great offense in terms of runs scored and stuff of that nature. I know people are going to point to the fact that a lot of those runs came in Milwaukee. They were still, I believe, ninth in runs scored, and I believe they're still top 10 offense in terms of WRC plus. So all that stuff. I'm kind of frustrated with just the lack of, just the base running value they're not getting. I'm not saying the Yankees have to be a team full of fast players, but the grounding into double plays is awful, right? They ground into so many double plays that they have the second worst base running value in baseball. That is tanking their offensive value. They have the fifth most offensive runs on Fangraph. They have a 116 WRC plus. That's the fifth best. I guess that's matching up there. But the run scored, they have 150. That's seventh. They should be, second or third in runs scored. They're just not there because of the grounding into double plays and the base running. The base running has been sloppy at times. They're not a fast team. I get that. I understand it's part of the thing here. But for example, Austin Wells hits a single, what should have been a single. And Stanton is freezing on a line, or not even freezing on a liner, he's taking a step back on a liner. You freeze on a liner. That's high school stuff, right? Why are we taking a step back? He's not fast enough to get to second base, taking a step back. You've got to freeze there. Let Henderson make an unbelievable leaping grab, a ridiculous one that'll go on Sports Center and be the number one play. Let him make that play before you start thinking of going back, right? You've got to freeze there. It's just frustrating, right? I think it's a frustrating situation right now where it's just why is the offense not more consistent? It's not a player thing, it's not a mentality thing, it's not a process thing. It's just kind of weird luck. They just happen to play some of the worst games you've ever seen in the pockets of playing some really good baseball. It's a weird situation, Alex. This is an odd team, and on paper they're very good. And that's not talking about talent. I'm talking about the results. It just doesn't always feel that way to some people. They're a good baseball team. They're playing good baseball. They just happen to be playing some really ugly games lately. Hopefully that turns around, but yeah, they have to be more consistent offensively. I think their reinforcements will help them, but consistency is a big thing. They have to be consistent.
Yeah, that's kind of the MO, and it usually is for this team. I feel like every year we have the same conversation. They're a feast or famine team, like you said before. Obviously, losing Verdugo hurts, but he's not probably making the difference in a 4-2 ball game or a 2-0 ball game. You need guys we need more clutch situations, and there's just too many players that are not playing well. You have a couple guys who are doing really great, but then you have the guys like Stanton, who's ice cold again, like Gleyber Torres, who's ice cold, like Oswaldo Cabrera, who basically his on base percentage is 29% now. It's awful. His numbers have plummeted from his red start. He's it sucks, Ryan, to be quite honest, because Oswaldo Cabrera has gone from, wow, this guy might be able to be a big part of this team, to almost unplayable in the course of a couple of weeks. I love Oswaldo Cabrera, great young guy, brings a tremendous amount of intangibles to this team, but sometimes he's legitimately, when he's in his cold stretches, he's unplayable. He can't hit, can't get on base, 5.6% walk rate. It's just, he's basically a nothing at the bottom of the order. The Yankees need John Birdie back as at least a little bit of a better option and a better defender on the hot corner. They need DJ LeMahieu back, who's better than both of them, in my opinion, even though he's kind of cooked. I think he'll at least offer slightly better value offensively. He's a good defensive player as well. But Cabrera now, the last 15 days is hitting 221 with a sub 28% on base percent. He's been horrible. So, and I love the guy, and I hate to rag on him, but the truth is it's a production game. You play because you're producing. You play because you're an asset to a team. Unfortunately, we just have no infielders. They're all hurt. You know what I mean? If Birdie or DJ were playing, Cabrera would not play every day. So I think that we're desperately in need of reinforcements there. But let's talk about Jasson Domingeuz, who's been taking some big steps forward. I think he's throwing at what was it? 135 feet or something like that? He was throwing long tosses now. He's making some really good progress over the summer. He'll get some rehab games, but all is going well on the Jasson Dominguez front. How do you think the Yankees integrate him back into this equation? Because right now I kind of get the sense that their outfield's situated, right? Judge obviously is situated. Obviously you look at Soto's on fire. Verdugo's been excellent. Do you think that there's a world where Jasson Dominguez eats some of Stanton's reps at DH? Maybe they don't want Dominguez to be playing the field all that much because of his elbow. They want to give him more time, but he can still hit at a high level. Maybe they want to give him some at bats, and on those days where they have Stanton resting, maybe Dominguez ends up playing. And because obviously he has more athleticism, the guy can at least freaking run. Stanton's lack of speed has been a detriment to this team. I don't know if I know you've been watching, but if you guys have been watching, you watch Stanton run the bases, it's just he's a non-factor. Like, he can't move. It's horrible. So if he's not producing in the batter's box, he's basically a net negative to this team. And we anticipated volatility from him, and it's he's been more bad than good this year. What are your thoughts right now about how Jasson Dominguez integrates back into this lineup? Do you think he takes some reps from Stanton, or do you think the Yankees just ride with Stanton until the death?
Yeah, so the way I look at this is, and I'm sorry for my raspy voice, but I look at Stanton and say, okay, if you can give me, like, I don't know what the tolerable WRC plus would be for this to work, but I would say, like, would you say like a 120, 122, 123, somewhere in that range? Like, I can see why the Yankees would justify playing him, but in the same vein, he's so slow. Like, even right now, he's at a 118 WRC plus. He's on pace for a 1.1 WAR. If you were to play, if you were to get 600 play appearances, right? Like, is that really good enough? Is that really good? Like, I know DHs do not accumulate fielding value. Like, their fielding value is bad. I am astutely aware of this. But, like, are we really gonna pretend, like, do we really have to pretend like a 1.1 WAR is, like, good enough? Like, I'm not, again, like, Stan has a whole year to let this work out, or I guess he has until Dominguez comes back and I'm gonna give Dominguez time in AAA. Like, even when he's rehabbing, like, when he comes back, I'd let him go to AAA, and I think the Yankees are going to. I think, he's coming back from, Tommy John surgery, and that kind of zaps your power for a little bit. Bryce Harper didn't hit a home run for like 2 months, basically, with that situation. So I'm not necessarily looking at a guy like Dominguez and saying the second he comes back, things need to rush him into action. But I am kind of looking at him and saying, he kind of feels like the heir apparent. Not at DH necessarily. Maybe you kind of like have a rotating DH, but having a rotating DH would be nice because you can kind of get creative there. You can move guys around, whatever it may be. I look at third base as kind of like the biggest issue on the team. Like, could I live with Stanton playing every day if it meant the Yankees got a good third baseman? Absolutely. Like, 100%. And that's how slow Stanton is. I think he's far from the biggest problem on this team, but, when you have Dominguez, it's not even a matter of, like, Stanton's not good enough. Stanton's not good. Stanton's this, Stanton's that. Because, like, let's be real here. Stanton is, like, again, like, I just don't think he's a bigger problem than third base. But I do think that when you have a guy like Jasson Dominguez, when you have a Spencer Jones on the way, when you have Juan Soto hitting for agency and you would like to bring him back, you do need to ask yourself what that DH spot's going to look like, what the future of the outfield's going to look like, who's going to play, who's not going to play, all that stuff. And that's got to be part of the equation, right? Like, that's got to be part of this conversation. It's tough. You'd like to have a readily available infielder. Like, I like Caleb Durbin, good infield prospect, can play all over the place, but I kind of view him more as a utility piece. Like, I view him as somebody you kind of throw out at different spots, gives you insurance all over the field. And there's no shame in that. There's no problem with being a good utility player. Look at Cabrera. Like, Cabrera is somebody I would love to have in a utility role. Like, kind of just like throw him in left one day, throw him in right another day, throw him in second, short, third, whatever it may be. Play him at first in emergency case situations. Have him pinch run. Have him play against a tough righty. Like, all that stuff. I would love that. Cabrera has like a 104 WRC plus against righties. He's pretty solid against them. Like, that's kind of like what I dream of for Oswaldo Cabrera. If you could have versatility, the bench is not great. Like, the bench depth is kind of bad. Like, it sucks. Like, it's not really the Yankees' fault either. Like, they brought in John Verdi. They expect to have LeMahieu. Both those guys are hurt. Obviously Verdugo on paternity leave, that hurts your outfield depth. And obviously if anyone's blaming, upset at Verdugo for having a child, like, that's like, you kind of gotta ask yourself, like, what are your priorities? Because baseball's not bigger than family. It's just not. But yeah, kind of tying it back to the relevant point here. I don't think Dominguez comes up immediately when he comes back from rehab. I think he will spend time in AAA. At third base is a bigger problem to me than Stanton is, but Stanton is still somebody you have to monitor because speed sucks. It's not good. You mentioned it's a big problem. Like, it's not a minor issue. JD Martinez is a bad base runner, right? Giancarlo Stanton's a terrible base runner. Like, there's like kind of levels to this. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, Russell Wilson's a below average starting quarterback, or he was over the last 2 years. Daniel Jones stinks, right? Like, there's just levels to this, right? It's not the same level of stench. It's not the same level of below average play. There are depths to it, and there is a difference, and it does affect how well you play. Stanton being as bad of a base runner as he is really does hurt this team. Hopefully the offense is good enough, because if he can give me a 125 WRC plus or 130, I'm not going to care. And hopefully the other guys around him can continue to hit, and hopefully the Yankees can he can be good enough where the Yankees can pour assets into third base, because I think that, again, that's the biggest issue. But kind of answer everything. Yeah, it's definitely something to monitor, and I will say this, third base is just a much bigger issue to me.
It definitely is a big issue to me as well. But let's talk about Gerrit Cole. Gerrit Cole has tossed on flat ground. He's been getting ready to actually toss off the mound soon. I think that June 1st is a little bit optimistic, personally, in terms of how quickly he can get back to full speed and, incorporate and get back into the mix here in the starting rotation. But I'm looking like third week of June sounds realistic to me. I'm thinking like a month and a half from now. Second week of June, that seems like more of like I could see that happening timeline. He's still far away. And look, the truth is the Yankees need to give him as much time as it takes to get back to full strength. They don't need to rush this guy. There is no freaking reason to rush Gerrit Cole right now. The Yankees are not losing because of their pitching. They're losing because of their offense. So give Gerrit Cole as much time as he needs. Whether that's giving him an extra 2 weeks, a couple extra rehab assignments, that's fine with me. He's doing well. He's throwing well. The elbow's feeling good. He said he had a good day the other day. Ryan, what are your thoughts about his timetable for return? People say June 1st. I think we're looking more of like a mid to later June return, because I think that they want to give him as much time as possible.
Yeah, I think, we're all playing the guessing game, right? We're all just kind of like, oh yeah, he'll be back by this point in time. He can't come back before May 27th. I think it was reported that it's unlikely he'll return on that date. That makes sense, right? Like, Brian Cashman was pretty confident they were going to need the 60 days. If there was even a possibility that he could come back the day, like as soon as the rehab stint ended, I don't think the Yankees would have put him on the 60-day IL, like, just straight up. So, I mean, look, I'm not worried about like Cole having to take a little bit longer. I think that's the right thought process, as you mentioned. Got to be careful with him. You can't treat Gerrit Cole, you can't treat a June game the way you would an October start, right? And you can't get desperate. You can't in June. If you are, your season's kind of over, right? Like, if you're desperate in June, you're really not that good anyways. And looking at like I know people talk about like bullpen usage. That was something we didn't really get to talk about. Like, oh, why is Clay Holmes not coming into the game? Oh, why he's not pitching 2 innings, this and that. Like, if you want your closer to tear his UCL by May, sure. Like, if you don't want to have a closer, cool. Like, if you want Gerrit Cole to rush back and tear his UCL, cool, right? Like, if that's what you want, you just want this team to suck, if you want guys to get hurt, I guess you could rush these guys back, but the Yankees aren't stupid. They're not going to do that. It's really important to be delicate with the arm, with the elbow, with the shoulder. Pitching is such a high-risk thing. Like, it's not a natural motion. Guys get hurt doing it all the time. Like, Alex, it feels like every week it's a high-profile name getting hurt with an elbow thing, right? Like, every week. Spencer Strider, the situation with Cole, Shane Bieber, just out of nowhere, dude's carving up batters. I'm rubbing my hands. I'm salivating. I'm like, oh, Shane Bieber's gonna make for a great Yankee at the deadline. And the guy tears his UCL. You look at Framber Valdez. I don't know if he didn't tear his UCL, but he did get hurt with his elbow. It's just everybody, right? It feels like everybody's going down with it. You've got to build these guys up carefully. You've got to watch their pitch counts. Yeah, when Gerrit Cole comes back, if he's throwing a no-hitter through 5 innings, yeah, pull him. I don't care. Like, you think I care about, oh, you got to let him do... No, I care about their health. Their health is the most important thing. It's number one. We could win 87 games and be a wild card team. If everybody's healthy, we're a World Series contender. Like, we just are. Like, this is a World Series contending roster. I'm not going to hear a counter argument. This is a World Series contending roster. This is a good enough roster to go up against anybody, right? It's just a matter of how many of these guys are going to be here in October health-wise, right? 2022, that was a World Series contending roster until the postseason, when they didn't have Benintendi, they didn't have Carpenter, and they didn't have a Montas, or they had Cortez basically on a hamstring injury pitching. That wasn't a World Series contender. The World Series contender was the team we saw in June. It was that healthy squad. It was that team that got to move off of Gallo and get Benintendi in, or have Carpenter come out of nowhere. Even in 2021, when the Yankees were healthy, they played really good baseball. In 2023, when the Yankees were healthy, they played pretty okay baseball. Like, they were about like a 88, 87 win team when they had Aaron Judge there, right? Like that was the team they were. They were awful without him. So I look at this roster. I think they're good enough to make the playoffs. I think they're more than good enough to make the playoffs. I don't know if we're going to win the division. Orioles are pretty damn good, as you mentioned, but I think we're going to make the playoffs. The AL's not great. Houston stinks. The only good teams seem to be all in the AL Central. The AL West is kind of a disaster right now. It's early. Teams can turn it around. The Red Sox look pretty good, like that kind of thing. But like the Yankees, I think are going to make the playoffs. It's just a matter of keeping these guys healthy and getting them ready and making sure they're here in October, not just April.
Yeah, exactly. It really is going to be a long season full of caution and full of kind of managing these players. And a lot of them are kind of older. One of the ones that really stands out to me is Rizzo's workload. I think that he's being over pushed right now. I think they're pushing him a little too hard. They need to give him some rest days. When DJ LeMahieu comes back, that's why they wanted him back so fast, to play some first base, give him some days off. Rizzo has that chronic back injury, and it's always pops up every season. You risk that being more of an issue. So I kind of feel as though the Yankees need to be careful on how they move forward here. But nonetheless, they're still a good team. They're going through some kind of early season roadblocks in terms of offensive inconsistency. But, you lose Verdugo. Judge isn't playing the way he usually is. Glaber isn't playing the way he usually is. Once these guys eventually hit their stride, this should be a much improved team. But, definitely the first month has shown us a couple of problems that we need to get fixed. I'm not overly concerned right now, but I think they're worth mentioning just because, it is a talking point. But, guys, always happy to hear your thoughts below in the YouTube comments section. Make sure to like and subscribe as always. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.
Perfect.